So today we are very glad to Initium from the Initium lab to introduce the VLTS, how to build a web app in 1 hour using VLTS. So let's welcome.
I'd like to thank the OL Lab for inviting me to give this talk, and I hope it's going to be useful for most of us. So let's start. So if you do anyone get on the Wi-Fi? So it's okay. The network is okay, right? And today we are going to talk about React in 1 hour. And it is a guided tool towards the fundamentals. So if you're looking for advanced skills, this is for the talk. This is for the beginners. Speaking of which, I'm curious, how many in here actually wrote any HTML and CSS? Okay, some of you. How many of you wrote JavaScript of any form? Quite a lot. So how many of you used React before? Nobody. Great. So you won't know if I make a mistake. Okay, so I'm from Initium Lab. So Initium Lab is a lab that aims to push the limits of journalism with technology. And currently we are a team of 6, and I think many of us are here actually. And that one is a little bit blurred. That's Pupili, the data scientist and director over there. And that one is Frank, our data engineer. That would be myself. And that's Chao Tian. And that's Victoria. And that's Kate. So we are from various backgrounds. I personally from a journalism background. I was a newspaper editor actually. And we are supported by Initium Media, which is a news organization, and we try to push the limits of journalism. And what do we mean by that? This one is a 3D printed infographic. Since we have a focus on data journalism, we make a lot of infographics. But then infographics can only be seen by people who are not visually challenged. So what about those people who are visually challenged, who are blind? So we think about that, and we try to advance this with this 3D printed infographic. It's about the legislators of Hong Kong's voting patterns. But not only can you see it, you can actually touch it. And we are contacting organizations for the visually challenged to examine the usefulness of that model. But that basically gives you an idea of what we've been doing. So we do a lot of data analysis, and we try to present them in various forms. And we also try to look for new data. We not only use the open data already there, but I see some of you are smiling, maybe you have played it. So we made this kind of quiz-like web apps, which are what we are going to do today. And many tens of thousands of people played it, and so through these games, which are entertaining by themselves, we can give the insight about our readers or even humans in general. So, who is this guy talking to you? I was a student of applied communication studies, which is completely irrelevant to computer programming. Then I became, after graduation, I became a financial editor with MainPow. If you read MainPow at law, in the recent years, you probably read news edited by me, but you wouldn't know. Then I left and found a media dedicated to data journalism, which died. Then I got hired, luckily, by Initium Media as a data journalist, and also work as a news engineer. So to speak, I'm transitioning back and forth. So what I'm telling you is, if I'm stuck, please be very patient. It's known to happen, but I promise you I will solve it. Just in case you don't believe me, this is a MainPow newspaper published about a year ago. You can see my name over there. I was actually editing newspapers just a few months ago. Anyway. So let's talk about React. React does only one thing. It renders your UI. So you feed it, you feed your data into it, and it gives you back UI, the user interface. It does nothing else. It doesn't tell you how to connect to the network, doesn't tell you how to manage your data. It only renders your UI. And today, that's the only thing we're going to do. And when we try to use React for other things, for non-UI things, it gets very weird, and we will soon see that. So what's so special about React? For me, who is a beginner, the good thing is that the syntax is familiar. It's just XML and JavaScript and nothing else. So for example, if you are going to make a list of things in React, you just use for loop or map, right? They're just native JavaScript. But if you use some other frameworks, you need to learn a new syntax called ng-repeat and learn and memorize how ng-repeat works. In React, you just use for loops or map. And the mental model is also familiar for me as a beginner because it tells you that the UI is kind of like a state machine or a function. Okay, you feed in data and it will show up accordingly. And we will talk about this later because I think that's a very important point. And also, what's special about that is Facebook and Instagram are using it in production, which means they have every motivation to debug React and to make it pragmatic and useful. I can actually show you this. If you go to Facebook and you can open the console. I hope everyone knows how to open the console. On Chrome is Option Command and I. And you can do something like this. You can, for some reason, you can do this. You can do that version. You can see that Facebook is actually using a release candidate. That's the most updated version of React, which is 0.14, which is what we are going to use today. So they put a lot of faith in it. They put enough faith in it to use in production a release candidate. And actually, just a few weeks ago, Facebook Messenger was, you can play the same trick here, you can try it on your browser version. They switched to RC1, but about maybe a week ago, they're still using beta 3. So they really have faith in that enough to use a beta version in their production app. So that's a good news for us. And here's I think the key idea of React. So what's difficult about UIs is that you have to manage state, right? The user clicks something, or your browser is supposed to grab something from the internet, and everything gets very chaotic. In React, it's saying that the elements of a UI is like an object, and more importantly, it's generated by a function. So the components or classes in React is just like the object constructors, which are functions, in JavaScript. And they will create objects, just as components will create elements. And for a function, you will pass in parameters, arguments, right? And when you do that, in React, they are just called props or properties. They're just like attributes of a HTML element. When you say, for example, PE class equals to hello world, then you're passing in hello world just as an argument to that component, to the element, excuse me. And in a function, you've got scope change, so you can access variables outside of your immediate scope of immediate function. That's called context in React, but it is undocumented, so we won't use it. And in a function, there are internal states, right? In internal variables, you need those internal things. And in React, they're just called states. And a function returns a component, object constructor usually returns an object, right? In React, it just renders, right? It's almost similar, and we will see this parallel very soon. So in React, you write something like that. Okay, it's a node, and the text equals to hello world. It almost like you are writing JavaScript when you say new node and pass in a named, it's an object, but usually we use it as a named parameters. It's almost parallel. We can see this when we go to the coding part. And here's the key idea too. So re-render everything. So as I said, in UI, states are very difficult to manage, and it gets very chaotic very soon. So how do we deal with that? Okay, so how about every time any state, any internal state of your UI changes, the whole component is re-rendered? All right, we don't care what changed, we just re-render everything to keep it clean. So we can be declarative. So we tell React what we want. We want this to act like that, and React will figure out how it should actually become what we want. And here's an example. Let's say you make a long unordered list from a big series of data. And then suddenly the data changed, and the items in this list needs to conform with those changes. How we do that? Well, supposedly you can keep references to every item. Say you have 1,000 items in that list, then you keep 1,000 JavaScript references. When some of them change, you use that reference to those DOM nodes to change them. But this is, well, not sounds very chaotic, isn't it? And how about we don't keep those references, and instead we look for DOM nodes. So we have a render DOM node, and we look for each one of them. Are you the one that's supposed to change, or are you the one that's supposed to change? But the problem with that is that the DOM is slow, as we know. So here's the React way that many people say they are good. I have no idea. I just tell it to you. That how about we recreate every time some lists, some items in your list changes, you recreate a whole table. So you don't need to keep references, and you don't need to manipulate a very slow DOM tree. And that's the React way. And to do that, we probably need something more efficient, because if we re-render the DOM tree every time it changes, it's very inefficient. So a lot of people are talking about this DOM node, which is a feature of React. That the idea is that JavaScript is fast with the recent invention of V8 and all those very fast JavaScript engines. And the DOM tree, the thing that actually you see, is very slow. So let's create a mini DOM inside JavaScript, and every time something changes, we only compare this mini DOM before and after change, so we know what actually needed to be changed. Then we update the real DOM only when necessary. So this is JS land where everything is fast. We have a list, then data changed, we re-render everything, which is still fast. And then we compare each other and we say, oh, one list item changed. And only then we go to the DOM land, which is slow, and tell DOM land I need only change that. So this is the basic idea when people are talking about virtual DOM. But in fact, virtual DOM can be much more than that. It can mean easy server-side rendering. So basically, what we've been talking about is browser rendering of DOM tree. But since a DOM is already implemented, your server can use React to render pages, and you don't need things like Phantom.js that simulate a browser. And it also means learn once, write everywhere, which means you learn React and you learn its syntax, which is simple enough. You can write things other than browser web. Right? There is React Native, which works on iOS and Android. But I'm not saying that you write one app and it can automatically comply to iOS. You still need to write twice. But it's the same logic, it's the same syntax. Also, there is a library called React Canvas, which ignores the DOM almost altogether. It creates a canvas in your browser, and everything that you write in React Canvas get rendered onto that canvas only, and no other DOM manipulations. And there is React 3, which is about React. You write React and you render it onto 3D 3D canvas. So here is the not so key idea about React with JSX. A lot of people don't like it. It's basically mixing XML with JavaScript. If you have any previous web development experiences, you know that people tell you that you should never do that. You should separate HTML, you should CSS and JavaScript. And React is telling you to do the opposite. I don't personally have a knowledge of which one is better, but let's try that one first. So basically, when you write JavaScript, JSX, you are still writing JavaScript. It just gets translated into that. So basically, when you write that, it just gets translated into a JavaScript. And so if you really prefer the pure JavaScript where you can still write like this, it's just not as convenient. Okay, so talking is done. Let's start coding. And I think so basically, there are two ways we can do this. If you like to code with me, that means I do some coding on the screen, and you can do some coding on your screen to see how it works. You can open that quiz.html. I hope you can find it. It's here. You can try react.initium.com, and there is this gigantic quiz.html, and save it onto your screen. Excuse me, save it onto your disk. And open it in a text editor and a browser. And I hope you have a bigger screen than I have, and which will work better. And on the other hand, if somehow you get lost in between, or you prefer to just look at what I've been doing, you can open this Tutor's live version. It's a file on my disk, which is channeled on the internet, and you can see what I will be doing. Okay, so is everyone ready to move forward, or any questions so far? Good? Okay, let's begin. App that I did very recently. So basically it's about asking your opinions of someone else's, your significant other having affairs. Okay, this is a very simple idea. There is a text of the question, and there are a list of options. The user can move on and click some option, and it will move on, and it will move on, and it will move on, and then it tells you the result, which there is no result because this is a survey kind of thing. It doesn't have an official answer. But what we are going to do today is, instead, we are going to make a quiz which has correct answer, right? You want to check your friends. What's your knowledge of something, okay? And so it's slightly different than this, but this is a good idea of what we are going to do today. Now, let's start. Okay. So let me introduce you to the file. If you have quiz.html, it's identical to this one. And for the ease of deployment, I write everything in one HTML. We are not supposed to do that. Please don't do that in production. Okay, this is just for convenience. And so that's the normal stuff, the head, the stuff. So this is the first one we're going to source. It's the 0.14.0 -RC1. That is the newest React package. That's the release candidate 1 published a week ago. And in this package, React is separated from React DOM. So what is the difference? So do we need to learn yet another package? No. Basically, the idea is that React is this core thing where the syntax, the basic syntax lies. React DOM is the web thing. So you write in React and tells React DOM to make it into a web page. So supposedly there are other things. For example, React Native, right? It will become native apps, iOS apps, Android apps. And as I said, there are other things. So before then, before 0.14, this is the whole thing is called React. Now this is called React, and this is called React DOM. Okay, this is just naming things. So nowadays, if you use React to write web apps, you need these two packages. And we also need Babel. So what does Babel do? Babel translates JSX into native JavaScript. So your browser will never know that you were writing in JSX. Okay, in production, you were using a native command line tool to transfer that. But for convenience, this is an in-file version. So if you use that, you can write JSX just in your browser. Okay, so that's setting up the stage. And one more thing about Babel is that you can write EX6 now. So what is EX6? EX6 stands for ECMAScript 6, the 6th version of ECMAScript, which is basically new features in JavaScript. And they are quite useful, and we're going to use it because it really illustrates the fundamental ideas of React. And this sounds very complicated, but I promise you they're quite easy when you see it. Okay, this is the injection point. So if you write in React, you need an injection point. And everything in it will be replaced by the React component you write when you render it. So this text, you're not supposed to see it, but you will still see it when React somehow breaks. So this is convenient. So if you put it there and somehow your React script doesn't work, you will see this. All right? And this is the new, is the real thing. So it needs to be the type Bible, text Bible. So this part is the first React component you ever see, I suppose. So it's very simple. As I said, a React component is just a function, right? So you create a function that has sort of a return, render is return, okay? That returns, well, render is a function that returns something. I hope you can understand the indirectness of this. But eventually, it just says, quiz is a component that is actually just an H1 element, but the content of the element is this .props.text. And what is props? Props are just arguments, parameters, right? This is a function, and these are the arguments passed into that function. And if you know some JavaScript, in JavaScript you call every function has a property called arguments. This is just almost the same idea, right? You pass a prop called text into that function, and it will render it as H1. So the next part is React DOM. So if you use the current version, the current production version of React, you will write React.render. But as I said, the web part of React is now being separated. So you now use React DOM.render. And it just says, I want a quiz component. I want to pass an argument called text, and the content is this is life, right? And remember, there is this is XML, so you need to self-close that. So this whole thing is become an element. This is like calling a function, right? This is initiating a component, which is like calling a function. I call the quiz function, please create a UI component, a UI element, which I pass the text argument, which is this is live. And the second part of it is just the mount point. As I said earlier, it just is this. Just tell the React DOM, I'm going to need call this quiz function, create a quiz element, and replace it, and replace that content, the div with the content with that. So what does it do? It do exactly like that. Okay, and you can write if you download the quiz.html, you will say something like this is hello world. You can play with this, right? This is really live. And there you go. It's changed. So now we are going to start building this app. Really. So to build a quiz, first you need the questions and the options, right? And to do that, you simply, well, create, wrong point. Just, let's call it quiz data equals to an array. And let's make it an object, each entry, question. Who is the brother of Sherlock Holmes? Anyone actually know the answer? Who's the brother? Exactly, wonderful. So, but our users will know, right? We want to test them. So we make many prompts. Maybe it's my prompt. Maybe it's man prompt. Maybe it's my prompt. Okay. Now, let's make it very stupid here. First, we need to remember to pass this. Okay, we have a data, remember? And this is a function. This, right now, we are passing it a text, but we are no longer passing a text. We are going to pass it, let's for convenience call it exactly like this. Quiz data equals to quiz data. Okay? And so this is only coincidence. You can name it anything you like. But for convenience, we're going to call that. And remember this little thing, this little bracket, are the transition, are the bridge between XML and JavaScript. So if you instead here you write something like this, it's not valid. It's not valid because in XML, you're writing XML and telling you to do something without quotes. That's bad. So when you add this bracket, you're telling it that, okay, we are exiting, we are leaving the XML world. We are entering the JavaScript world. Please give me the JavaScript variable called quiz data. Okay, now the quiz data gets passed into the quiz function. And we want to change that, right? We want to show this, at least the first question. So a simple thing to do is, first we need to get the data, to catch the data, right? Well, let's call it QA. QA refers to question and answer, right? Question, you've got a question, your answer is combined. Let's call it this.props. As I said, this.props are just the properties passed into that. And it's called quiz data, the first one. Okay? And we are going to return, first of all, the question, just to make sure it works. So QA.question is just the first element of quiz data, and give me that question. All right, let's see if it works. Oh, there you go. This is the brother of Sherlock Holmes. Okay, now, so we now need to display the options, right? We've got a list of options. There are automatic ways to do that. You don't need to list them one by one. But let's be stupid for a second and actually type hand code these things. Okay, so the first list element is, remember these brackets to enter the JavaScript row, QA.options 0. That's the first list element. Excuse me. And we copy that 4 times. This is really stupid, but it can be worthwhile. Options 1, options 2, options 3. Okay, will it work? No, it doesn't work. Why? Because a JSON.js element must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. This makes perfect sense if you think about it. Return, we are still writing JavaScript, as I said. When you return things, you don't return 2 values simultaneously, right? You only return one thing. Just now, we are returning this, and it works. Now we are returning 2 elements, h1 and ul, and it breaks. So how to solve that? Usually it's very easy. You just wrap it in a div, as we always do. There we go. So now you are returning only one value, which is a div, which contains other things, but React doesn't care. So, there you go. So if you are seeing something like this, you are making progress. So basically what we just done is telling you how to transition between JavaScript land and HTML land. Okay? Let me repeat what we have done. We created a quiz data, which is the question and the first question and then the options to it. We pass it into the quiz function or component, whatever you call it. And then we're going to make a list of them. Now, this is really, really stupid, right? We don't want to hand code everything. So how do we do that? Well, we first, which is the strength of React, create components, subcomponents, to abstract this idea. This looks very complicated, right? Let's make 2 components, one for the questions and one for the options. The question is very easy because it's always the same thing, right? It's always similar. So we'll just call it question test equals to, now we are going to use, you can use a function just like this. You can use this way, but there is an EX6 way which really highlights the functional essence of components. Here's what we do. We are going to make a bracket and we are going to deconstruct the props. We'll just call it options, question. And we write an arrow like that, and h1, just copy this. Question. Okay, so we just made another component. This one and this one are of the same assets, but this one looks much cleaner, right? And it really tells you it is going to take an argument called question and make it an h1 element. And then we substitute this with question text. Question equals to enter the JavaScript land. It's called QA.question. And remember to self-close it. Remember this one is important because it's XML. Otherwise, React will complain. And then we refresh. Nothing changes, which is a good sign because we just abstracted part, we just refactored part of our program. Our program still works. Right? Great idea. Then we are going to abstract this part. Oh, excuse me, that's a mistake. And we're calling it the option list, which is exactly the same. It's going to receive options and copy the whole thing. Oh, excuse me. Copy the whole thing. And there's no longer QA. In this function, there is only options. And then we substitute it, doing the same thing, and it becomes option list. Options equals to QA dot options. Remember self-close. I hope it works. It does, right? Still works. So now we can focus on this part. This is really ugly, right? You have to hand code, and if the data changes, if only we add one more, say, Microsoft, and refresh, and it won't show because this is hand coded, and we want to change that. As I said, when you create a list in React, you usually use for loops. But for loops are stupid, right? You have to do it one by one. Instead, we really have this functional programming way. Instead, we write, you can safely delete this. We are going to map it. So what is map? Map basically takes a list, apply a function to it, and returns that apply function to each item of the list, and return the result, which is also an array. So if you have a list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and apply a function called times 2, it becomes 2, 4, 6, 8, right? Basically, we tell React to take a list of strings, okay? Take a list of strings, map, which pass in a function, and you can style it this way. And we are going to use ex6 notation again. This function takes an option, remember this is option singular, and make it into a list item with the content. Excuse me, there shouldn't be spaces here. And there you go. Okay, so basically it takes the strings, make it into a list items. I think it's rather straightforward, right? And excuse me. Yes, this is important. In React, when you do things like this, you are supposed to add a key to it, which should be unique. We will not talk about how to do that. We we know, because we are the creator of this data structure, we know that these answers are different. So we use this. And there you go. See, Microsoft is showing up because this is now automatic. Right? You can delete that. And it will disappear. Okay, so we spent a lot of time building a demonstration of listing things. But that's not very useful. We need really, really important things, right? We want to show two questions simultaneously, like a questionnaire. We want the user to be able to click it. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we are going to need state. So right now, this UI is perfectly stateless. You enter the same data structure, it always shows the same thing. But when the user can click it and change it to the next question, it has states now. Because the same UI component can be showing the first question, or it can be showing the second question, right? So we need to introduce state. So how do we do that? Well, just like how you create functions. In functions, you initialize your internal variables, state. In React, you say get initial state. Straightforward enough, which is a function. Remember to comma it because we are still creating a object here. And let's call it current question, QA serial. That starts with 0. Oh, excuse me, I made a mistake. The function should return a object, which is rather close, and current QA serial, starting with what? Let me see. Oh, made a mistake. Sorry. Yeah. So it's an anonymous function that returns an object which sets the initial state of quiz, which is 0. And now we are going to replace this. Now we know that this is the state we're going to change, right? the first question is 0. For the second question, this becomes 1. So for convenience, we can declare that you can use this dot state dot current QA serial to access that number. But we don't want that, right? That's long. We can say this is current number. Still too long. And this becomes current number. Okay. Should be a semicolon. Refresh. Okay, still works. Good sign, right? But we are not still clicking it. To do that, we need event binding, which means we need to click it and some event happens. And to do that, first let's go back to the quiz data. We need to add another question, right? Question. Which one is an RPG? Options. Is Minecraft an RPG? Is Mars Effect an RPG? What else do you want to ask? StarCraft an RPG? Okay, there you go. So we got 2 questions. Now, let's talk about event binding. So just now, we created a tree, so to speak. The root of the tree is called quiz. The root of it is called quiz. And then below it, there is a question test. And option list. When the user clicks the options, the event is here, right? But it needs to tell its parent quiz that we are going to update the state. So what we are going to do is, in general, these things don't happen, right? You don't go up to it. You go down. You do it with props, but you don't go up. So how do we go up? We pass a callback. That's the normal way of this kind of child-parent communication, right? The quiz pass a callback to option list, tells option list that if the user clicks you, you tell me. Okay, so this is how we're going to do it. Let's add some basis and create. Let's call this handle option click, which is a function. Remember the comma. And it does only one thing. This dot set state. This is how you change a state. You use this dot set state. Don't mutate this dot state dot things, because that's wrong. That won't work as you expected. Oh, did I miss something? Oh no, I didn't. This is just okay. So don't do this dot state dot current QA serial. Never do this. This is wrong. Okay. You're going to. This also receives an object, and it says current QA serial is this dot state dot current current QA serial plus 1. Okay, so basically this function tells this. In React, you got this convenient auto binding. When you call a function, init this is the component. So since this function belongs to quiz, when in this function, this is quiz. And this set state tells you, okay, you're going to switch to the next question. Now, how do we pass that? This is a function belonging to state. Belonging to quiz. We are going to pass it to option list because question text doesn't need to know about this function. Right? Question text, when you click the question text, it does nothing. So again, for convenience, we're going to do this. This dot handle option click. Okay, so basically you pass in a parameter called handle option click, and the value is this dot handle option click. And now we go to option list. Right now it only receives one argument. We now need two. Let's also call it handle option click. And now the screen is much shorter than I expected, but I hope you can see it here. So we are going to add this on click equals to handle option click. So basically, did I do something wrong? Oh, sorry. My apologies. This should go here. Yes. This is one of the sort of like attribute or props of it. So on click. When you on click, it receives that function. Okay, this is rather long. I hope this somehow works. Ah, back. Okay, I'll try again. You click a thing. So basically, when you click it, the option list calls the callback and tells the quiz to set state to your current state plus 1. So what happens to the second question? When you click it, it's undefined because we only have 2 questions. Now you can create 3 questions actually. You can say, well, whatever question. What does Super Mario do for a living? Option. Is he a carpenter? That's right. Is he a web developer? Is he a joker? Or is he a plumber? Okay, we'll refresh it. Oops. Now I missed some. There. Sorry, I missed a comma. There we go. Okay. So still, there's no end, right? That's stupid. You don't want to click and nothing changes. So what do we do is now we need a conditional rendering. So what does that mean? That sounds very difficult. Well, it basically means if the next question is a question, then you render that question. If the next question, if there's no next question, you render some sort of result page. Tell the user that it ends, right? You want that. So let's do it. So basically, first of all, we need to, so basically this is done by just simple JavaScript if, right? The basic idea is, in render, let's write, and we don't need a separate state for this. We don't need a state telling the user, oh, is the end? Because we already know which question we are at. And we know the full length of the questionnaire. So we can compute it. Basically, the idea is, if this current number is this dot props dot quiz, sorry for the long naming, dot length. All right. If the current question number, remember this is 0 base and the other one is 1 base. So when it equals to that, that means you made an end, right? You should render a result page, which we haven't created. That's all right. Otherwise, do your normal stuff. Oh, excuse me, this should be returned. I'm mixing them up. Okay, so basically, we need to create a result page, which, let's make it very easy. One result is a function that takes nothing. It just tells you that it ends. H1, it ends. H1. Let's see if it works. It ends, right? It works. Now, that's almost the end of this presentation. But we like to add one more thing. right? We want to have a correct answer, right? This is a quiz, right? You don't just tell your audience that, hey, it ends, right? You want to tell it how many questions do you do right. And to do that, first we need to modify the data, because right now the program doesn't know which one is correct. And we're going to tell them the correct, correct option. Who is the brother? That's Minecraft. And correct option is Mass Effect. It's an RPG. And of course, Super Mario is a web developer, right? Okay, now we already have the correct option. So next thing we need to do is when the option list is clicked, somehow we need to record whether the user is doing it right. There are two ways to do this. You can do it with a global variable which records everything, or you can pass again the correct answer back to option list, back to the handler. Right? Remember we have a callback function here, and that will change things. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do the conventional way. So in option list, there's options and handle option click. We need to tell the option list what's the right answer. And of course, we are going to tell it correct option, which is QA.correct option. Okay, now, where is my option list? Now, option list needs to take that. You need to add that. So now option list knows who is the correct option. Now what can it do? Well, what it will do is tells the handle option click what's the correct answer, right? Because handle option click is going to change the state, right? Because it's going to remember somewhere. So we now have two states. The first state is which question is showing, and the second state is the currently how many questions did the user answer correctly. So here we're going to add total score, which starts with 0. Okay, now option list gets the correct option, and here's not a JavaScript thing. Here's is not a React thing, but a JavaScript thing. We can't just pass the option like that, because the callback function doesn't work that way. It won't receive that. Instead, it will be immediate called and return an undefined. And when actually this thing is called, we got undefined is not callable, right? So we need to do a little trick of transforming handle option click into a function that returns the callback function for that correct option. Okay, so now this is getting tricky. So let's return a function which receives an event that does this. Okay. And now we need to add the logic. So the business logic is that when the chosen, the one that's being clicked by the user, is equal to the correct answer, right? We will ask for 1. Otherwise, we will do nothing. So this handle, remember, this has become correct option. So in this, we will know. How do we know how do we know which option did the user click? Well, it's just JavaScript. It's event.target.test content. Oh, excuse me, I forgot the username. Chosen option equals to that. And we are going to call create a variable called score. So if chosen option equals to correct option, then score is 1. Otherwise, score is 0. And this set state needs to add total score is this dot state dot total score add score. Okay, remember the comma here. I'm not really good with commas. So basically, you're telling React that when this is clicked and the chosen option is equals to the correct option that's being passed in, the score is 1. Otherwise, it's 0. Now, but that's not all, right? We have this. Oh, right. When you click it, you see, oh, you cannot set state of null. Why is that? Well, because that's another JavaScript thing, that this is lost. When you return a new function, the this becomes when it's in strict mode, it becomes null, and that's bad. So we are going to do here. Remember, it's the right bracket of the anonymous function. We are going to give it this. This is very tricky. We want this result page to show the scores, right? And it normally shows the ends. So we are going to go to the result page, which is used here. But where is it defined? Okay. Now, result page needs to change, right? It needs to receive an argument now because it changes. But what is the argument? The argument is score, right? And it says you get scores. And when we call it, we are going to pass it a score, this dot state dot total score. Refreshes. Okay, who is the brother of Sherlock Holmes? Michael's who's RPG Mass Effect, one of the web developer. There you go. And that will conclude this demonstration. And you have made your first quiz app. Let me summarize just the demonstration again. So basically, the syntax of React JSX, you mix XML with JavaScript, and the bridge is that two little brackets. When you use that, you are in JavaScript mode. When you don't, you're outside, you are XML mode. And you pass you pass arguments to functions, you pass props to components. You access those components with this dot props dot something, or with EXX deconstructing pattern, you can write it like this. Okay, the prop 1, prop 2, and this is a function, and you can just receive that. And every component has a state, and this state is accessible with this dot state, but don't write to this dot state. Instead, use this dot set state and pass in an object, and use onClick, which is remember this is a capital letter. It's on purpose to distinguish with the native ones for event part. And if you want to know more, go to the React official documentation. For this talk, I've read probably 20 to 30 tutorials. Still, the official one is the best. If you really want to learn, start with that one. It's official and it is rather useful. It can be better, but that's where you should start. And we are hiring. And so basically, we welcome more developers and data scientists. If also you are interested in an internship in research and development about data, about journalism, about technology, about making this world a better place, then please go to our web. You can subscribe to our newsletters and send us emails. Any questions or comments?
So let's thank the speaker first.